Well, hallelujah, praise Jehovah. From the heavens, praise his name. And I have been in a mood to sing praises to God. How about you? Do you enjoy that? Well, that's not what we're going to do here. We're going to have our lesson concluding the story of Jacob's life. We left him with 11 sons and a daughter, or more than one. Daughters weren't always listed. And one was listed. We'll see her story in a little bit. And Jacob had served for 14 years, if you'll remember, 7 years to marry Rachel, and Laban deceived him, gave him Leah, made him promise 7 additional years to get Rachel. And at this time, he's got now 14 years, 11 sons, and a daughter. And he goes to Laban and says, Laban, please allow me to go back to my homeland with my wives and children. I have served you for 14 years, and you know I have worked hard for you. Laban said, well, please stay here. God has blessed me because you have been here. Name your price, and I will pay it. And Jacob said, well, since your flocks have grown greatly under my care, and I do not own any animals and will not be able to provide for my own family, I need some animals of my own. Laban thought for a moment and said, okay, what are you thinking? What do you want me to give you? And Jacob said, well, I don't want you to give me anything, but I will continue caring for your animals. But please, just let me go through your flocks today, and I will take every speckled or spotted or dark-colored sheep and every speckled or spotted goat, and they will be my wages. Then you can check my flocks, and if you find a goat there that is not speckled or spotted, or you find a sheep that is not speckled, spotted, or dark colored, you can consider those animals stolen. This is how you can know for certain that I am honest. Laban said, okay, that makes sense to me. I'll agree to what you have said. So Jacob did as he'd proposed, and he took all the designated animals and gave them to his sons to care for. He even had his animals 3 days away from himself and Laban's animals. Then Jacob took newly cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees. He made white strips on them by peeling the bark in strips. And he placed those branches in the watering troughs where Laban's animals drank. Now, when the stronger females were in heat, he'd place those branches in front of them, and they'd give birth to streaked or speckled or spotted animals. And Jacob would put his special branches in front of the stronger animals. But when the weaker animals were in heat, he would not put those branches, those special branches, in the watering troughs. And so the stronger animals gave birth to the impure animals, and Jacob would have his sons come and get them. And by doing this, Jacob's herds grew rapidly. Now eventually, Jacob heard Laban's sons complaining that he was taking everything that their father owned, that he was becoming wealthy by stealing what they should inherit. And Jacob also noticed that Laban was treating him differently, not as friendly. God noticed this too. And this covers 6 years. 6 years since he made that proposal to Laban. And now God says, Jacob, my son, it's time for you to return to your home, to your family. I will be with you. Well, Jacob sent for Rachel and Leah to come to their father's herds where Jacob was, 3 days away. And Jacob said, "Your father's attitude toward me is no longer friendly and encouraging. He's beginning to be a little hostile. You know I've worked very hard for your father, but he has changed my wages 10 times in the last 6 years. However, God has protected me. If your father changed the rules about which animals would become mine, God made sure that I still benefited more than your father. That's why my herds have grown so large. Anyway, God has told me it's time for me to return to my homeland." Now Rachel and Leah looked at each other for a moment. They whispered together. And then they said, "We both agree. Since we are females and have been given to you, our father treats us like foreigners, and we won't inherit anything from him. You have paid for us, and we are of no value to him. All the wealth God has given to you from our father, that belongs to us and our children. You do what God has told you to do." Now Jacob did not tell Laban what he was planning. And before they left for Canaan, his homeland, Rachel waited till her father was out shearing his sheep, and she went and stole his household gods. Oh, so Jacob did not know that, and he put his wives and children on camels, and he drove all his animals as fast as he could, and he took all the wealth he'd accumulated, headed towards his father in Canaan. Now 3 days after Jacob left, Laban was told Jacob was gone. It took him a day or two to gather all his relatives together, a large number, and they went after Jacob. 7 days after Jacob had left, they caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. And God appeared to Laban in a dream the night before they caught up to Jacob. And God said, "Laban, you better be careful what you say to Jacob. Don't say anything good to him. Don't say anything bad to him. Just be careful." So when Laban and his group caught up with Jacob and his family and people, they camped right next to him. And Laban said, "Jacob, what have you done? You snuck away with my daughters like captives of war. Why didn't you tell me you were leaving? We could have sent you away with a celebration full of joy and singing. You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You were foolish to do this. I can travel much faster than you, and I have more men than you do, so I could overpower you, but the God of your father told me not to say anything good or bad to you. However, you left to go to your father's household, but why did you steal my household gods?" Jacob said, "Well, I was afraid to tell you. I thought you would take your daughters from me. But if you find your gods among my people, whoever has them will be put to death. So now, in front of all our relatives here, look for yourself. If you find anything that is yours, take it." And Laban searched Jacob's tent, and then Leah's tent, and then the tent of the servant girls that had his sons, and he found nothing. Then he went to Rachel's tent. She had her father's gods in her camel's saddles, and was sitting on them. And Laban searched and found nothing. And Rachel said, "Father, please forgive me. I cannot stand in your presence because I'm having my period." Well, Laban came out and stood in front of Jacob, and Jacob said, "Have I done anything wrong? Did you find anything of yours? You searched everything. Now, in front of our relatives, put everything here that is yours, right here in front of everyone, and let them judge between us. You had no right to chase me down. I served you for 20 years. During those years, your animals did not miscarry their young. I have not eaten your animals. If a wild animal killed one of your animals, I replaced that animal with one of my own. You demanded that I pay for anything that was stolen from you. I worked for you day and night, through the hot days and the cold nights. I slept very little. That was my life for 20 years. I paid for your daughters by working for you for 14 years. Then I worked 6 more years, during which time you changed my wages 10 times. During those 6 years, I worked to build my own herds while caring for your animals as you had agreed. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham and Isaac, had not been with me, I have no doubt you would have sent me away with nothing at all. But God knows what I have endured and how hard I have worked for you. Last night, God himself warned you. Laban said, well, the daughters, they're mine. Their children are my children. The herds, they're my herds. Everything you can see around you is mine. However, there's nothing I can do about all of this. Let's make a covenant between us. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. He told his relatives to gather more stones, and they placed them in a big pile around his stone. And they ate a meal in front of these stones. Laban said, this pile marks our covenant. May God watch us while we are separated. If you mistreat my daughters or take another woman as your wife, remember that God is watching. I will not go past this point to harm you, and you will not come past this pile to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor judge between us. And Jacob took an oath in the name of the God of his father. He offered a sacrifice there and invited all his relatives to share a meal with him. And after they'd eaten, everyone went to their own tents and spent the night there. In the morning, Laban headed home. And Jacob continued towards his home. And some angels met him along the way. Jacob said, this is God's camp, right where they met me. And so Jacob then sent some messengers ahead to find Esau, his brother, in the country of Edom, in the region of Seir. And he told him to greet Esau and tell him, your servant Jacob says he has been living with Laban, and he now has cattle and donkeys and sheep and goats and servants. And he's seeking your favor. The messengers returned and told Jacob that Esau is coming with 400 men. Hearing this, Jacob became quite afraid. He divided his people and his animals into 2 groups. He hoped that if Esau attacked one group, the other group would be able to escape. And then Jacob prayed, God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, God who told me to return to my homeland and my family, God who said he would make me prosper, I am unworthy of all your kindness and faithfulness. I had nothing but my staff when I crossed the river Jordan, but now I have 2 large camps. I am pleading with you to save me from my brother Esau. I'm afraid he will attack me and the mothers of my children, and even their children. But you have said you would make me prosperous with descendants so many they would be like the sands of the sea, which cannot be counted. Jacob spent the night there beside the Jordan River. He decided to send a gift to his brother. And he sent 200 female goats with 20 male goats. He also sent 200 female sheep with 20 rams. He even sent 30 female camels with their calves. Then he sent 40 female cows with 10 bulls. And finally he sent 20 female donkeys with 10 male donkeys. He sent each group of animals separately, and he told the servants that were taking the animals to go ahead of him, but keep quite a distance between their herds. He told the servant leading the first group, "When my brother meets you and asks, 'Who do you belong to?' Where are you going? Who owns all these animals?' Tell him, 'These animals belong to your servant Jacob, and he is coming behind. He sent these animals as a gift for you.'" Jacob told the leaders of each of the other groups to say the same thing. He thought the gifts might put Esau in a good mood. So that night, he sent his wives and their female servants and his 11 sons across the Jordan River at the ford of Jabbok. Then he had his servants take the rest of his possessions across, including all of his animals. When he was the only one left on the east side of the Jordan River, a man came and wrestled with him all night. As the sun was about to be seen, the man he was wrestling with realized he could not overpower Jacob. So he touched Jacob's hip socket and wrenched his hip. The man said, "Let me go. The sun is coming up now." Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man said, "What is your name?" He said, "I am Jacob." The man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, because you have wrestled with God. So your name will be wrestled with God, Israel. And you have struggled with God and men and have overcome." Israel said, "Please, what's your name?" The man said, "Why do you want to know my name?" And then he blessed Israel. So the next morning, Israel continued on his way, and he saw Esau coming eventually with 400 men. And he divided his family into groups. Leah and her children, they were in the second group. The female servants and their children were in the first group. And Rachel and her son were in the last group. Israel went ahead of all of them. And as he approached Esau, he bowed 7 times. He bowed to the ground. And Esau jumped off his horse and ran to meet Israel. He gave Israel a huge hug and kissed him. The brothers both wept. Esau looked at the groups coming towards him and asked, "Who are these people with you?" Israel said, "They are your servant's family, given to me by God." When the female servants and their children came close, they all bowed to the ground. And then when Leah and her sons came, they bowed to the ground also. And when Rachel and her son came, they too bowed to the ground. Esau said, "Why did you send all these flocks and herds?" Israel said, "It was my desire to honor you and to seek your favor." Esau said, "I already have a great number of animals. Keep your animals for yourself." Israel said, "Please, if I found your favor, your graciousness, accept my gifts. Seeing your face is like seeing the face of God, since you have greeted me so warmly. God has blessed me with more than I need. Please, accept my gift." Esau said, No, I have all I need." Israel said, "Please, I insist." Esau said, "No, really, no." Israel said, "I insist." Esau said, "Okay, let's go. If you insist," Israel said, "I insist." Esau said, "Let's go. I'll ride with you." Israel said, "My Lord knows children and young animals need to travel slowly. Please, just go ahead of me and allow me to move slowly until I reach your home in Seir? Esau said, then I'll leave some of my men with you. Israel said, you don't need to do that. I am thankful that you have welcomed me. So Esau headed home, and Israel headed to Succoth and camped there for a short time. And then he moved to the region of Shechem, where he bought a piece of land. He built an altar to God there and called it the God of Israel. That was the altar. So Israel's daughter, Dinah, went into the local town to visit some of the women. And Shechem, the son of the local ruler, that's who the town was named for, well, he saw Dinah, and he wanted her for himself, and he raped her. He loved her very much and tried to persuade her to love him. He told his father he wanted to marry Dinah. Now, Israel heard what had happened, but his sons were all away taking care of his animals, so he didn't do anything right away. So Shechem's father came to talk to Israel with his son. However, Israel's sons, they returned as soon as they heard about what had happened. They were shocked and tremendously angry because of what Shechem had done. Hamor said, Israel, my son is in love with your daughter. Please give her to my son as a wife. Since you live here, you can give your daughters to us, and your young men can take our daughters as their wives. Stay here and live among us. Our land is open for your use. Shechem said, Men, please bless me with Dinah as my wife, and I will pay whatever price you ask. Well, Israel's sons talked it over, and the oldest, Reuben, spoke. He said, we cannot allow our sister to marry a man who is not circumcised. That violates our custom, and it's a true disgrace to our people. We will agree to your proposal only if all your males are circumcised. Then we will give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves. Only then will we become one people with you. If you are not willing to do the circumcision, then we are going to take our sister and move somewhere else. Well, Hamor looked at his son, and Shechem nodded in agreement, and after a few moments of thought, Hamor smiled and said, we agree. Shechem was excitedly pleased and urged his father to go with him to the gate to their city where the most influential men sat. Hamor explained to them, these men are friendly, and it would be a good thing if we let them live here. We have plenty of land for them to become a part of our people. Then we can marry their daughters, and they can marry our daughters. All we have to do is become circumcised. It is their custom. If we do this, all of their animals and their possessions will eventually become ours. The men sitting at the gate agreed with Hamor and Shechem. So all the men of the city were circumcised. 3 days later, while all the men of Shechem were still in pain, Dinah's brothers, Simeon and Levi, took their swords and killed every male, including Hamor and his son Shechem. They took Dinah out of Shechem's house and they left. The rest of Israel's sons looted the city where their sister had been defiled. They also seized all the flocks and herds out in the fields. They not only carried away all of the wealth of the city of Shechem, more like a town, they also took all of the women and children as captives. Israel says, Simeon, Levi, what have you done? You have caused us major issues. All of the people in Canaan, city dwellers and country people alike, they're going to all be angry at us. We do not have enough men to defend ourselves if they join together to take revenge against us. His son said, do you want us to allow men to treat our sisters like prostitutes? Well, God visited Israel and he said, Israel, I want you to go to Bethel and live there. Build an altar there, an altar to God who appeared to you in that area when you were fleeing your brother Esau. So Israel called for all his family and all his friends and servants that served him. He said, get rid of any foreign gods you have. Purify yourselves. Change your clothes. We are moving to Bethel, and I will build an altar to God there. God who answered me when I was in trouble. God who has blessed me everywhere I have been. So everyone gave Israel their foreign gods and their rings in their ears that were dedicated to their foreign gods, and the clothing they wore that was, during the time they worshiped the foreign gods. And Israel buried all of that under the large oak tree at Shechem. And they left for Bethel. Fear of God fell on everyone in the region of Shechem, so no one pursued them. And when they arrived at Bethel, Israel indeed built an altar there. Well, eventually they moved on, heading towards Ephrath. After all, with all their flocks, moving was just part of their lives. And while they were traveling, Rachel had become pregnant, and for the second time. And while they were still traveling, it was time for her to give birth. And she had major issues. The midwife told her not to give up because she said, you're giving birth to a son. However, only moments later, Rachel died. Isaac buried her there. And eventually he went home to his father in Mamre. Isaac had lived 180 years when he died. Esau and Israel buried him together at Mamre. Quite a story. And I've shortened it by quite a bit. Speaking of shortening it, and starting next lesson, we're going to cover Joseph's life. Probably 3 parts. Genesis 37 through Genesis 50. Now, I'm going to skip a couple of chapters that don't directly deal with Joseph and are not significant for our purposes. But you might want to read Genesis 37 through Genesis 50. Only take a few minutes, 15 or 20 maybe. No more than half an hour. God bless you. Apply yourself to studying His Word, and His blessings will come even more. Amen.